I thought that was one of the most interesting parts of your papers, how you were questioning what the normal ranges were and then realizing that even our normal range for hemoglobin comes from like a 1968 WHO study.
And the craziest thing about it is the WHO defines anemia for men as less than 13 and women as less than 12. And then if you look at that, it's all based on this one study. And the study did show, like, if they took all these men and all these women, although the numbers were quite small, that's what they found. But then the second part of the paper, they actually gave all the women iron and they gave all the men iron. And it didn't shift the hemoglobin lower limit of normal for the men, but it shifted it for the women basically to be equivalent to men. But despite that being in the paper that they cite that says women can have a lower hemoglobin, they still have the lower number that was before the iron supplementation, which doesn't make any sense to me. And I think it may not be exactly equivalent. We do know that hormones play a role in erythropoiesis. And so I don't think like the ranges should be equivalent for men and women, but I think that lower limit of normal should be much closer than it is.
It's almost like if we're building the normal ranges based on what we observe, but there is systemic undertreatment of a disorder, then what we're observing does not necessarily present healthy.
Totally. Totally. And I think the sad thing is that with anemia, we don't have similar like clinical outcome data that we have for other things, right? Like if you think about something like blood pressure, right? We say we know under these levels we have better outcomes or, BMI, like all of these different things, right? Where you have a significant proportion of the population that isn't healthy or isn't necessarily where they should be. And we don't just say like, okay, well then we'll just say that's okay because this big group of people happen to fall in that range.
Have you heard of any like changes that are coming down the pipeline?
We had published a paper on eliminating race-based reference ranges, and subsequently was invited to present to the WHO because they had a table of hemoglobin cutoffs for very specific age groups. So I think it said like, if you're a Jamaican girl between 13 and 14 years of age, this was your hemoglobin cutoff. But it didn't have every single demographic, right? And it just was like so absurd, right? Because we know that race is a simple construct. It doesn't have, it's not equivalent to genetics. It doesn't have a biological basis. And why like Jamaican girl from 13 to 14, did something happen there? What about the 12-year-old? It just doesn't make any sense. So we did present to them on what our recommendation would be in terms of removing race and ethnicity. But I think there's a lot of political forces that go into those things because they make these really big goals of eliminating or decreasing anemia worldwide by this percentage. And if you redefine what you're classifying as anemia, that can make it challenging to achieve those goals.